Welcome back. Councillor McKay has had to leave us. But we are moving on. We're now back out of camera and this is the CAO report. I will mention that we will break for lunch in, let's say, about a half an hour.
Do you want to speak to my TGA report first or just?
Oh, yes, way up there. Yes, thank you. So we had two conference reports, one from myself and one from Councillor McKay. By the length of the reports, you can see that we thought it was a great conference. Are there any questions that I could answer on either of our reports? Councillor Ingham?
Yeah, they were very well done. I mean, I learned a lot from them. I also learned that, we are doing a lot of things right and we can make a lot of improvements, but I do have two questions. The first one being, was there anybody that attended that on the committee, else from the Town and Gown committee, somebody from Acadia?
No, they were invited and they considered it, as was the ASU, but they did not attend. I believe in talking with Ian Murray that they are going to try and make an effort to have somebody there next year.
And so the second question would be, would you be giving a report to the committee on this, that, as a...
What I have been, so the chair of Town and Gown has now switched back to me, and we want to have a meeting shortly. One of the things I was thinking, I would really like for the Town and Gown committee, some of the presenters we had, I'm sure we could arrange like a mini 2-hour session that maybe we could open to other people, because there were some really good presenters that I did talk to, and they'd be happy to come in on a Zoom or something. So yes, I will be doing that, and Jody also, I'm sure. But I'd also like to maybe in the fall set up some kind of a mini online 2-hour conference for Town and Gown, but also that other people could come. Some of the things around enforcement and the management of college off-campus properties that are done by some of the universities was very interesting. I will say that they have in the States have very different setup. All the state universities are, or most of them, if not all, are land grant universities. So their charter requires that they do have like an on-off campus relationship, and they often have departments or small work groups paid that are part of the university, whose job it is to work off campus, to work with landlords and so on. That's very different than Canada. Their funding is different, but I did not see anything that we couldn't do. Like, I don't see anything that bars us from doing some of that money aside. So that is my plan.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Palmer.
When your report was very good. Thank you for that. Most of the examples you had though were from bigger schools. Did any of the smaller schools speak?
No, and in fact that is something, and all the municipalities are larger. So I noticed in Councillor McKay's, she's right in all the things she said about it. Fort Collins is a beautiful town. It's about 133,000. The universities, I think, about 33,000. They are land grant universities. So comparing what they can do in the size of their municipalities to what we are is quite different in a different jurisdiction. But I still think we can learn some things. It's just we may not be able to aspire to that level of stuff that they have.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Now the CAO's report.
Okay, just a few things I'll highlight that isn't in the report itself. So we had a very successful Canada Day and some weather that cooperated for at least part of the day. I think the final tally, we were in the several hundreds that came by to participate. So that was great. So congratulations to staff and the team for pulling that off. Also just checking in on the mud challenge. You received your challenge from Mudley a month ago. So if anyone is able to accept that challenge, let Kelton/Nick know, just so that we can plan for teams and hopefully we see folks participating. We had a really good tour with a few counselors of the Innovation Pavilion at Acadia. For anyone that wasn't able to attend, I think we could probably arrange to do it again at some point. I think it would be really beneficial if you weren't able to go. I think the folks that attended got a lot out of it. And Ian Murray wants to set up something similar with the entrepreneurship space and the incubator space for council to become more familiar with that as well. So stay tuned for that in the coming weeks and months. Public works and engineering pieces. So as noted, Fairfield came in under budget. So that is starting to get underway. And Alex did outline all of the street maintenance priorities that we have as part of our tender this year. So if you do get any questions from constituents on what roads are going to get repaired this year, you have that for you for quick reference. Just a couple other things. So I think you might remember that back in, it feels like forever ago, but January or February, we started working with Justice and the RCMP to have a general duty policing resource model done, which essentially looks at all of our different calls, what time of day they're coming in, the type of call, and then will give us recommendations for the number of police officers that would be required for us, both under a district model or a standalone detachment model. So they're actually coming in today at 2 to do a preliminary sort of review of what they found with staff. They're going to take our questions and suggestions, and they're going to come back in September and do a formal presentation to council and the policing review committee. So that will be great. So we'll help inform even the MPSA negotiations as we move forward, having that understanding. So that's underway. We had 2 positions close on Friday, one for our fire position and one for our utility. So we'll be going through those resumes and hopefully getting those filled fairly quickly. The file for the fire department with Greenwich and Wolfville continues to move forward. We've got a bit of a committee that's plugging through things. I think the biggest piece to share with council is we've decided to go out to an RFP for the transition coordinator services. So we finalized that RFP. It was supposed to be issued through the county at the end of last week. I haven't seen it yet. So I suspect if it hasn't been, it will be this week. That will close mid-August. And the intention would be that that firm or person would be able to hit the ground running early in the fall. So I'll keep you posted on that. We had a pretty busy weekend for compliance, as debriefed by Kaden this morning. There'll be some follow-up with some tickets being issued later today. Fireworks were a bit of an issue, and we just had a preliminary discussion that might be something that we do bring back to council to have a conversation a bit more explicitly around fireworks and what you'd like to see with respect to those in town, because right now they are permitted. We don't really have a bylaw that governs those other than the noise and nuisance party bylaw. So those are the things that I wanted to highlight. I don't know if anyone had any questions for me.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you, Erin. So let's see if we can get through a couple of these reports. First one for discussion is the nuisance party bylaw first reading.
So the nuisance party bylaw has been in place now since 2019. So we've got a couple years of working with the bylaw, both for individual charges and for charges related to landlord infractions or property owner infractions. And as a result, it's a couple years in, staff have been looking at the bylaw and working with our legal team to make some improvements. And so this RFD brings forward some recommended changes to the bylaw now that we've been able to work with it for a bit. The main change that is being proposed is amending the bylaw to allow landlords the opportunity to show they're not guilty if they can demonstrate that they took reasonable steps to prevent the nuisance party from happening. That's currently not something that's enabled under the existing bylaw, and that would allow some of the concerns that have been brought forward by landlords to be addressed with that provision. It also makes us a bit more consistent with some of the other municipalities that do have nuisance party bylaws. Primarily the ones in Ontario. There's not a lot of communities in Nova Scotia that have this bylaw, but the city of Kingston, for example, we would be consistent with how they've worded it in their bylaw. So that's the main change. Other changes to the bylaw include clarity that in order to discontinue a nuisance party takes effect immediately. It wasn't clear in our current bylaw. Clarity that an officer can include a police officer or a bylaw enforcement officer for the purposes of administering the bylaw. Clarity that the notice to the landlord must include the date and time of the notice to discontinue the nuisance party was issued. And clarity on what constitutes a subsequent nuisance party. So this happens if there's a second nuisance party at a property within 2 years after a notice to discontinue a nuisance party is made, regardless of whether there was a ticket issued or not. So just some clarity points that we noted. Minimal financial implications to these amendments, potentially fewer landlord tickets if they are able to demonstrate that they did take the steps in due diligence. But it's not a significant amount of revenue that we're bringing in through the landlord tickets. The majority of our tickets to date have been on the individual side, and that's been working quite well. With respect to communication requirements, if first reading is given in July, we would then advertise, and then Kaden and I would make an effort to engage the landlord association just to let them know the proposed changes and get any feedback so that we could bring that back for a second reading in September. And likely also just have contact with the Good Neighbors group as well, just to make them aware of the changes. So that's the report. If anyone has any questions, I can take them. Oh, I should note, sorry, also that we did include the reasonable steps for landlords to prevent nuisance parties. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's a sample of what could be used, and did note that compliance staff could update that from time to time as new ideas come forward about what might be a reasonable step.
We put the motion on the floor. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Just turn this on. I would move the committee of the whole for the following motion to council for decision, that council give first reading to the amended bylaw, chapter 97, nuisance party bylaw as attached to RFD 034-2023.
Seconder, Councillor Butler. Councillor Palmer, did you have a question or comment?
So I just want to be clear. So with the nuisance bylaw and the land. So if I move into an apartment and the landlord passes me a list that addresses all that, we're not ever going to charge them with nuisance bylaw. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily. It would be a judgment call for the compliance officer, but they would look at the circumstances. The landlord would have to work with Kaden to say, these are the steps that I took to prevent this nuisance party. The list is an example of some of the steps that could be taken. Maybe one step would go far enough in a circumstance, or maybe multiple steps would be required given the circumstance. But Kaden would weigh that out and then make a decision whether the reasonable steps were taken or not. And if they weren't followed, then a charge could be laid on the landlord.
And it's per address, not per tenant,
Correct. Per address.
even though the issue I have with that is that the landlord it's hard put under the Tenancy Act of getting rid of the tenant. I mean, the Tenancy Act works against the landlord in a lot of ways.
That's why if a landlord can show that they've taken some of those positions that we've outlined in those reasonable steps. So if they did get references in advance for their tenants, if they did share the nuisance party bylaw with their tenants and talk to them about the non-academic judicial process with Acadia, if they did send emails and written communication to them in advance of big weekends to say, we won't tolerate parties. Like if they're able to show those steps, then they won't be charged under the bylaw, as long as Kaden can show that those steps were taken in recognition of that. Right now, it's automatic. So if a landlord receives sort of 2 infractions on the same property, the second one triggers automatically a charge. So this gives the landlords an ability, to your point, just to be able to say, no, I've actually taken these steps. And so they can be found to be not guilty of that on a subsequent offense.
So we can charge the tenant numerous times.
Oh, the tenants can be charged numerous times, and we continue to do that. And the fine does go up every time the same person gets a charge. It will go up exponentially with each charge. We've had a couple that have received numerous.
And are we able to collect on those charges?
We've been collecting on those charges. Those are holding up well in court. We've done fairly well with those charges. And working with the RCMP to try to improve even the number that we are able to issue, because it is a little bit of a capacity issue and being able to get the IDs, and we're working through some of those processes. But oh yes, we can, anyone that's participating in nuisance party can be charged individually.
I think part of the one that it came up in conversation here, that it's the tenants don't even want the parties. Like people are showing up, they can't get rid of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the solution is to that. I mean, that's tough.
Yeah, and that's part of the common sense approach too. Like if the tenants all of a sudden find themselves in a position where of no fault of their own, they have a bunch of people showing up at their property. Again, those circumstances can be weighed before charges laid. Often the charges that we're laying, there's been active promotion of the party, an invitation to come to the property, or when being told to cease and desist, the party continues, or really inappropriate behaviors at the party have really been what's driving a lot of the charges right now.
Yeah.
But we've had tenants that have actually reached out and called Caden or called the RCMP and said, we don't want this. We didn't ask for this. Can you help? And we work with those tenants.
Deputy Mayor?
I think one of the strengths of this change to the bylaw or this amendment is in fact that it recognizes the efforts that landlords are putting in. Like I have had discussions with landlords where they were frustrated because they were fined and they said, well, we have it in the lease, we're doing this. So what this does is acknowledge, or it validates and those efforts and gives them, credit for it. So I think it's a very positive step in terms of dealing with the landlords, because but we also know that there's some landlords or property managers that don't do any of it, right? And well, whoever it is responsible, and this, hopefully will encourage them to behave more like the landlords that do all the right things. So I think this is a very positive step in terms of supporting landlords.
Councillor Ingham?
I agree with both of you. I guess my question, when Aaron, you were speaking about the measures that the landlords have in place, and one of them would be in the lease and getting the tenants to sign it. But then it will be up to Caden or a compliance officer to say if that one thing was good enough. Is that one thing good enough one time? Then it comes around again. Can they still use it? So then there's area of subjectivity. Should there be more than one? Do you know what I mean? Like that to me, I just feel like a little bit of a gray area. Like we already did that. That's good enough. So we didn't get a ticket. So if it comes around again, will that automatically be good enough? Do I make sense in that question? Yeah. So if I just have a little clarity around that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And maybe that's something internally we can look at. I'm not sure if we're able to do something that would constitute, okay, how many things do we need to pass?
I think with any charge, there is a bit of subjectivity. So on the first infraction, for example, Caden may look at that, or a compliance team may look at that and say, okay, that one thing was enough. Talk to the landlord and have suggestions. Okay, here's some other things you could do. If the parties continue, it's like, okay, show us, have you taken additional steps? And so I don't think it's going to be cut and dry. I think every circumstance is going to have to be evaluated on its own kind of merits and what was done or what wasn't done. I think it's really difficult to say, okay, you've got to tick this box, because every circumstance is a little different. So there will be some judgment involved in laying a charge, as there is now. Yeah, that's hard to do. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, ready for the vote? All those in favor of the motion, which is first reading to this bylaw, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's passed. I'm going to suggest that we have the info report on business licensing, and then we take a half-hour break. Because I believe the next item, I know Jody's given me some comments, and I think it'll be a longer item. So Aaron, are you doing that too?
Yeah, I can do this quickly since Devin isn't here. So in January of 2022, council had a discussion around a business licensing program for primarily WBDC members. And at the time, a motion was passed that directed staff to explore a business licensing program in the town. So Devin's been working with the WBDC on that. And with the new leadership at the WBDC and an enhanced relationship between the town and the WBDC, it's been decided that for the time being, they would really like to use their summer student annually to update the business registry that we have and try that first before we go the formal bylaw route. They feel there's some benefit to that, in that a member benefit the WBDC can provide. And it also adds a key relational task for their student and coordinator. It allows for more door-to-door engagement as part of that process. It gives them an opportunity to use their photography package, which is a member benefit, and the registry information to work with us on our website listing. And it avoids adding another bylaw or red tape at this time for the business community. The goals really of the business licensing program was to make sure that we do have an up-to-date business registry in place, that new businesses are checking in with the town before opening. So we have that welcoming opportunity for them and we're aware of them. program. And it allows us to provide an opportunity to showcase businesses on our website in an effective way. So we feel that that would still meet the goals. So we're going to move forward with trying that more informal approach. And then we'll debrief with council as part of ops planning for 24-25. And if we do need to move forward with a formal bylaw because something's not working, then we can address it at that time. But just wanted you to be aware that this is the approach that we're taking, given that council did have a motion on the books directing us to look into the formal bylaw.
Questions? Well, I have a question. The biggest industry in our town are landlords. Will they be, are they specifically included as potential businesses?
So they were specifically excluded when council talked about it in February of 2022. The focus was to start with the WBDC members and then look at down the road if council wanted to add in the landlord. So right now they are not part of the scope. And that.
Are you, no? Okay, all right, thank you. I actually thought it was 12:30 and it's only 11:30, so maybe this. No, I wasn't. I just see, I've got my distance glasses on and now I can see there, but on my computer, I thought it was 12:30. So unless somebody else, we could do the next one because it's not as late as I thought. Committees of council policy.
Okay, then I'll turn this over to Laura to go through what changes.
Okay. So this is not a new policy. You've seen this before. It's come back a couple of times. We've tweaked it. So we were directed by council back in February to look at potential standard operating procedures. And we've done that. And what I'll do is just go through some of the changes we made to the policy, and then feel free to shout out any questions. So we did some housekeeping things as well. So like putting in some definitions of what the quorum is. One of the things that council were looking for was more clarity around appointing alternates. So this was already here for each committee of council, but we've just made it more clear in the policy. There was discussion around committees to being vice chaired by a seated member of council unless mandated by higher legislation. And that was more, I think, to do with some of the technical knowledge that's required on some of the committees like PAC.
I can just on those last 2 points. So 5.2.5 gives clarity that council will appoint a councillor alternate for each committee, because that's been a gray area, but just one per committee that would fill in. So if we have 4 members on PAC, you wouldn't have 4 alternates. You'd have one that could fill in for everyone. And it just makes it clear there's an alternate per committee. And then to Laura's point on 5.2.7, vice chaired by a seated member of council unless mandated otherwise. If you recall, a lot of the discussion was around if the councillor member chairs, it allows the citizen reps to have more opportunity to speak and give the feedback. So that's why that's being recommended.
Are you taking questions
Sure.
throughout?
Yeah.
I have a few questions. Jen, do you have a
Okay,
question?
yeah, so just Aaron, just to clarify that, so all committees of council will have an alternate, even PAC, we already have 3 on there, so you'd still have an alternate for.
Yeah, you'd have one alternate per committee. So a lot of, this is what's being
No,
recommended.
yeah, I just wanted to be
One
clear, that's all.
alternate per committee, so that, yeah, you'd still have your 3 representatives on, say, PAC. But if somebody had to miss a meeting, you'd have one sort of global alternate for that committee that could fill in for you, so that you would still have full representation for that meeting.
So it would be up to the councillor that was missing the meeting to get the alternate to come in, okay? All right.
So my question is actually on 5.2.8. That's quite a change from what we are doing now, because the chair anyways is recommended by the mayor. So
Oh, sorry, that's a typo. You like that should be, yes, the chair and vice chair position should be selected annually by council. That's what that
Okay,
should say.
okay,
Yeah,
so
and not the
that's-
committee members. That was our, yeah, you're
that
correct in that.
was confusing.
Yeah.
I guess I just want to have a little discussion. I can see if we just have one person on a committee having an alternate, but PAC, I thought we already have 4 people. Potentially any one of the 4 of us people on that committee could be away. And so if, you know, if Ian is the alternate for PAC, you could be actually attending more often theoretically than any of the members. I wonder if PAC is an exception. It seemed that's the only committee that I can think of. Other committees mostly just have one, although the mayor can sit on all of them.
The only one that has one is accessibility. Everybody else has two and plus, and right now we don't have an alternate. on
Does Source
accessibility.
Water only
They
has
have
one?
two. They have
Who?
two.
That mayor?
Ian and
Oh.
and Wendy
Oh, they
and the
do.
mayor.
Okay.
So I think it's only accessibility that has one counselor and yourself, the mayor, with no alternate, but we will get an alternate. But I agree with you on the PAC because we already have 4 members. So I don't see why we would need, you know, an alternate unless again,
Yeah.
you know.
So
but-
we could say to, with the exception of PAC, like there was some discussion with council before that you liked sort of those global statements that are consistent across all committees. So that's why it was written in a way that it was consistent across all committees. But if it's felt that PAC should be an exception,
Well,
then we
because
can
then
say-
you have 5 members of council who are regularly on PAC. You may as well just have a committee, you may as well just make council the PAC, which we could do. So I think it's a bit of overkill and I do think it means that the person who's the alternate on PAC could actually be required to attend a whole lot of meetings, and it meets
Mm.
monthly, so it's a.
Yeah, I don't see the necessity
I don't either.
on that one. Maybe we could limit it to any committee that has 2 or under counselors on there would need to have an alternate, right? And that would be everybody else but PAC.
Yeah, makes sense. The other question I have, and this is. When Jeff was the mayor, I don't remember Jeff. I mean, I'm sure he was could come to any committee meeting, but I don't remember him coming to every meeting. It's a lot of meetings for the mayor to be required to be at every meeting, which is what we have now with our attendance policy. For me, it's not an issue but not every mayor is going to have the time flexibility to be at every committee meeting. So for me, that's a change of what I had experienced when I was a counselor and sitting on various committees. Certainly the mayor didn't always, I'm sure I sat in on meetings when Bob Stead was the mayor that Bob wasn't there. I always knew that Jeff was on PAC and he was there. Sorry, Jeff, if you're listening that I'm referring to, but I certainly don't remember him being at committees that he was not appointed to. Although any counselor can come to any meeting. So anyways, that's just a thought. I think it's not a problem for me, but I could see the number of meetings that I attend might be problematic for somebody who had a day job, for example, in the future. Isn't it?
Does the fact that the mayor is ex officio, I think, in my mind, sends a message to the committee that the mayor is welcome to attend at any meeting at any time, but not necessarily required to be there.
Well, but it shows up in our attendance. That didn't matter.
yeah,
when
so
we
we
had
should
the
just-
attendance, and it's now, I think it's listed as ex officio voting, whereas the CAO is ex officio non-voting.
Okay.
so the mayor has the ability to vote at all meetings for all committees. So there's the attendance policy consideration, but there's also the quorum consideration. So if you say that the mayor is ex officio with voting rights at all committees and then doesn't attend, that does impact quorum regularly. So this is an older clause. That's not a new change, but take your point. I think it's been used differently. So that's something that you may want to discuss. So whether you remove it, whether the mayor is not ex officio, or whether maybe the deputy and the mayor share the ex officio capacity.
That would make
But this is
sense.
this is an older clause that's carried forward, but if
That makes
it's, yeah, but if it's going to vote, it does impact quorum
Yes.
if somebody chooses not to come. So it does change it from a non-voting position.
Yeah, it wasn't as obvious to me until we had that public attendance policy, and now it's like, geez. Particularly if you're away for a week, there could be 3 meetings that the mayor would attend, and like, there's your 3 meetings. So I don't know what, but I think it certainly looks like we have a few things to update on the deputy mayor policy, but that certainly would be one that I would recommend that we add to the deputy mayor policy.
But maybe also, it may be something we need to look at again, regarding the attendance policy, because I don't think that that's fair to show, you know,
Sure.
so I think maybe the attendance policy needs to be reviewed as well.
Okay, I'll take that under advisement. Continue. Please.
Citizen membership. So again, we just put in some clarity. The process hasn't changed, but just to be more clear around citizen members applying, they're eligible to reapply for a second term. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get there. It's not a guarantee. Members have to serve 2 consecutive terms, or sorry, members who have served 2 consecutive terms on the same committee must take a leave of absence for at least 1 term. Again, that's not anything new. A citizen member may serve on more than 1 committee at a time. So a lot of this is just clarifying and making it clear for people because it's not any new decisions. Some of this stuff here, decision making and voting, we tidied up. The terms of reference had a lot of repetition. So the same things were in all of them, where this is an overarching policy. We just sort of tidied it up a little bit. Scheduling, this was a new one, I believe, that council requested, was that all council wanted to know when every committee meeting was taking place so that they could attend if they wanted to, even if they weren't members. So we can certainly make that happen, go forward. And this is the other one that was a new sort of consideration. Council wanted more clarity around what to look for in various factors when selecting citizen members, and we did create an SOP to sort of support this and go into a bit more detail. I don't know if there's any questions around that.
Question, I don't know, Councillor Ingham, if you want to weigh in. I see committee, citizen committee appointments as a great opportunity to get insight from residents, particularly I'm thinking of accessibility, where we have people who have lived experience on that committee. And there's a keenness in a number of members. We often get a fair bit of information, which is good. But it goes out to all committee members. Some of us may not know some members of the committee who are also citizen reps may not know if the level of attention they're supposed to pay to that. It may just be a situation that we're in now, but that's the one area on committee training or information that I feel maybe we haven't been as clear on. I think we're pretty clear on the technicalities of it, but because we found ourselves in situations where we maybe haven't paid attention, has not been paid to some of all of the information that we're given. And then it becomes awkward. People feel they haven't been listened to or something. Do you want to?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll just interject a bit. I mean, accessibility is a little different because 50% of the committee has to be in the population that working with accessibility or having a disability. So it's a little bit different in that respect. So everybody comes to the table with a little bit different understanding because we have hidden disabilities. So when you're explaining the terms of reference, which you did, some people's understandings are a little bit, here and some people are here, some people are more used to having meetings. And so I think that one specifically, sometimes we get into like the gray areas. So I mean, I'm wondering if we could, when you do the terms of reference, which you did, can we have maybe the committee members sign it to say, are you having a full understanding of this? If there's any questions that you have that we don't want to take the more time up because maybe there's just one person that is not understanding, then we can have like, maybe a little tutorial or something like that. So would it be worth adding to, have a signature of I fully understand my responsibilities of it, because some people won't sign it if they don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would
Yeah,
help.
I'm even thinking, so even if you are not next chair, but
Yeah.
you've had experience, you know what we are talking about too, in addition to having the clerk, maybe the current chair or somebody who in the case of that particular committee has a lived experience of that committee, I think would be helpful.
Sure, if that's what you want to do, we can certainly do that.
I don't know if there are other committees that are like that, but certainly I think you being part of the information that goes to new committee members would be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, and I have reached out
I know you-
before, and talked to people, and.
I know that the staff liaison person would as well, like Devon's done that before and
Yeah, yeah.
he's, so, but
Yeah.
certainly we can, if council want that to be the direction, we can.
I think it's always helpful to have the committee chair there with, to be, it just allows the chair to be aware of the training that has been given, even if you're just observing.
I really do think we did a good talk of the terms of
Okay.
reference. We did spend almost a whole meeting on that, and there was discussion on that. I guess to further go, I don't mind being, more interactive with some members of council as long as with staff, because that's one thing that we kind of intersect on, right? To go over that, because there also was issues with minutes too, right? That we want to have clarity on. So not to get to the nitty gritty, but yeah.
Thanks, Laura.
This is all just sort of housekeeping things. So yeah, we have here, again, this was already in practice, but just wasn't really written down. The town clerk or designate shall arrange for an orientation session for each new committee member upon that member's appointment to the committee. The purpose is to familiarise the member with the role, policies and procedures. Yeah, so just really what we've talked about. So this is regarding, this section's about the external committee. So earlier we talked about alternates or whatever for the current committees of council. So again, just to be clear that we can provide orientation for those external committees should they be required. The CEO or designate can sit down with them and have those conversations. Or if that's the council member, it could be, or a past council member that sat on that committee previously, we can do that. And alternates for these committees are appointed by council. And that's the same. So that was for the external partnership committees. Oh yeah, so there's the orientation section. Council members who've already served may be called to mentor or orientate new councillors. And alternates are provided. And that was just housekeeping section there. And then we did a couple of small changes to the terms of references. And again, it was mostly just housekeeping and making some of the things clear.
Can we go back to the
Sure.
task force and working groups?
Yeah.
Specifically under the working groups, and only because it in 5.10.2, it's identified public art, what stuck out for me, but this would suggest that these are staff groups. So my question is, what is the breadth of the membership on the committee? Could it include a councillor, or is it because it says will inform council?
You're talking about the task force?
More the
working
working
group.
groups.
Let me just find that.
It's up on the screen there, Erin.
5.10.3, it says that the CAO or designate will establish each working group and inform council of the creation in terms of reference of any working group. That suggests to me that council is not involved in a working group.
It's not involved in the creation of one, but a
No.
counselor could be on
that's
that
my
if they
question.
had a level of expertise that, yeah. But you wouldn't require a council automatically, a council rep automatically.
Could we add something to that effect,
Sure.
please?
I have a question.
Yes.
Oh.
sorry, Councillor Butler.
Just just a point of clarification for the 5.11.4 in the external and partnership committees. Each council representative will provide an update from their committee meetings at the committee of whole. Can that be specified if it's written or verbal? We provide written reports, but there have been times when we've only got a verbal report at a committee of a whole meeting and never a written report.
I think it is to
It's-
be written, but sometimes there is a meeting that happens, last
In
night,
between,
and so
yeah.
you're giving a verbal report today, but it's supposed to be written
Okay,
unless there are extenuating circumstances.
But it's not stipulated that it has to be.
Well, it is somewhere because we
I always
Also
thought that it
provide a
was supposed to be
report.
written, but I know
Yes.
there have been times when it's just been a verbal report because of where the meetings are
Yes,
placed.
yeah.
So whether a written report eventually is incorporated into either the
And I
minutes
think
or
that has been
something.
the practice, like
Yes.
if it's been a verbal report at the meeting, I do believe we've had the
Okay,
written one come and it
We can
would maybe
clarify
be
that.
circulated
To be
later
written.
on.
just a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes, because I understood if it happens after if the meeting happens after the date that you are supposed to get a report into the clerk, then all you can do is provide. So although sometimes we've walked on a written. report.
So I think for that one, other than, again, just a couple of, oops. Too far. One way far now. Yeah, just a couple of clarifying about length of terms and some of the terms of reference because they weren't.
I'm sorry,
here
I'm still back.
previously.
I have a lot of comments on the
Yeah.
earlier part.
Yeah,
5.11.2, and it may just be council may participate in committees with other partners. It's the may, and then we include Town and Gown, which is not a may. Kings Point to Point may be a may. Annapolis Valley Regional Library, that's something I would like to talk about in the future. We are one of, there are a number of members that appoint a counselor to that, and we chose not to do anything, but it will come back to, if not this council, then perhaps the next. The WBDC, that's part of their constitution that we have to be on that. So there's just when it says include but are not limited to, I would take some of those out. Town and Gown is a town committee.
It, just to clarify, we actually put Town and Gown in there because it's not a town committee. It's a partnership agreement between the three. That works. We've signed a contract through the MOU. So it's not a committee of council per se. It's an external committee that's formed through that agreement. So that's why it was kind of
Right.
there as a gray.
Yeah, but when it says council may participate in committees, that concerns me that we may participate in Town and Gown. I
So
think it
we should
just,
change it to will. Council
yes,
will.
I'm okay with
Does that make sense?
And that's all I had in there. Sorry.
okay. Is there, yeah, any questions
Oh,
or
sorry.
feedback?
Oh,
Is-
I guess
more?
I just need some clarification. Maybe you answered them already. So when I'm looking at committees of council, they're all, every single one of them is a 2-year position, except for planning is only a 1-year position for councillors, right? Yeah, so why, can we have that as 2 years, like to have it more consistent, with the other ones?
Yeah, council can make that change. I think the reason it was 1 year was just to allow for a little bit more transition so that everybody had an opportunity to be on PAC during a term, but. Yeah,
But I think
could
with
be.
3, that's half 3, 2 and 2, like 4, but the mayor's, yeah, I'm talking councillors. So there's 3 of us and 3, so you could alternate it to have the 3 councillors on, a 2 year and the other 3. So there would be opportunity for have everybody. I just think that committee, sometimes, if you've missed 1 or 2, or you don't have anything, maybe the 1 year is just not enough to get that experience.
That's.
Other question? I'm going back to my committees on accessibility. So on accessibility, there's on council, there's just myself and Mayor Donovan. Obviously, adding an alternate to that, but I mean, that's only 2 people. So I think the last meeting that we had, both of us were away, right? So there was no counselor present. So I'm just wondering on that. And then so I handed the chairing over to the vice chair, who is not a member of council. What will we do on that one? Because that's not inconsistent with the other committees that we have, but we only have myself as counselor and then Mayor Donovan on there. So would Mayor Donovan be vice chair, or how are we going to keep that? That's different than the other ones. What will what do people think about that?
So the way it's written is that the vice chair and the chair would be council representatives unless there's a higher form of legislation. So the accessibility committee, the vice chair is chosen by that committee. So if it's not a counselor, it's not a counselor. So it would go to the vice chair. Yeah, because it's got a different legislative.
Similar to RCMP.
Yeah.
But your point about having, well, I guess if we have an alternate, then that alternate could have stepped in for one of us or for both of us.
Yeah, so it would come down to like who would write the report. Do you know what I mean? As we're supposed to write reports to council,
Yeah.
you know, to council, then, you
The
know,
alternate.
the alternate, if we had them on there, that's why it's for me, it's necessary.
We're good? Yeah. I think we're good, yes.
So I think there is a motion.
Oh,
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that motion should reflect the amendments that you've requested. So we'll
Yeah.
bring back a clean copy with those changes to council.
all right, so can we put the motion on the floor, please? Sure. Yeah. That's
I would move that committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision with the amendments as discussed. The council approved the revised policy 110-001 committees of council policy as attached to RFD 010-2023.
Councillor Palmer had his hand up before I heard from you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Laura. That was a lot of work and good discussion. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That is passed. Council Policy Task Force. I think that's a fairly short one. You going to Laura or Aaron?
Are you doing that, Erin?
Yeah. So as we just witnessed, there's a lot of really good discussion that happens when we review council policies. And even in the last discussion, a couple of the other policies came up for reference, including attendance, virtual, deputy mayor. So one of the suggestions that staff have is that we actually create a task force consisting of 3 counselors to work with staff over the next year to go through all of our policies and make sure that they're where they need to be before the next election. Some of them, like the remuneration policy, is typically done sort of end of summer because the outgoing council sets those limits for the new. But there's some that obviously need to be looked at, and you've mentioned some of them today. And it's difficult for staff to kind of get in your head and know what you want to see as council on some of these. So I think there would be some real value in having counselors sit down in a public setting, they'd be open to the public, but to work through some of these policies, get a bit of a schedule for the year and go through them. The recommendations in the accessibility report and in Barb's EDI report was that we also look at them from an accessibility EDI lens. So that can be something that can be done as part of that review and just make sure they're working for you. So the suggestion would be that we would create a task force initially. If it works, then maybe that becomes an advisory committee of council longer term that would just meet as needed. It wouldn't necessarily have to meet routinely, but for now, just a task force makes some sense in my mind. And we would sort of go through all of the council policies. So just for reference, so you're aware, currently the ones that you have are the committees of council policy, the deputy mayor policy, the conference and professional development policy, council remuneration, council board and commission remuneration, policymaking and management, telephone and electronic polls, public participation at meetings, code of conduct, the attendance policy, and the virtual meeting policy. And there may be some others that, get added down the road. We used to have the correspondence policy was one we had talked about that didn't move forward. So there could be others down the road, but those are the ones right now that I think would be a good starting point. And so the suggestion would be that between now and council, if anyone's interested in serving on that committee, to let the mayor know and myself know, and we can see who's interested and come back with a recommendation for 3 names to populate that task force. And then we can start to do that work and dig into some of these policies in more depth.
Questions?
I just want clarification. So you want 3 councillors on there plus the mayor, or the mayor would have to apply for that committee too? I wasn't sure how that worked.
Yeah, 3 councillors.
Just
so
3
which could
councillors?
include the mayor or
Okay,
could be
gotcha.
3.
Okay.
Yeah.
3 members.
3 members of council, 3 members of council. Okay. And do you have a proposed, should we put something in the terms of reference of how often you would anticipate that it meets? So when councillors are deciding whether they want to be on it or not, the time commitment to, in their schedule.
So the recommendation would be if you thought this was a good idea, then we haven't drafted the terms of reference yet. We would go away and draft the terms of reference. And yeah, I mean, I don't know the frequency right now. It's sort of as needed. But if we're going to plow through those 10 policies, it would probably be at least once a month for the remaining part of this next year to get through all of them, with maybe the requirement to meet a little bit more frequently than that, depending. But that would be what I would guess would be the time commitment.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm thinking it's probably a good idea, given the fact of how much we'll talk about this at council meetings, to just sift through some weeds and sort of, and not to say that the other councillors that aren't part of it or whoever decides to be on it don't feel like they're not contributing, because it'll still come back to council. But there are a lot of like little intricacies that maybe we can weed out before we bring it to council. So I would be in favor of the task force.
Does that mean you'd like to put the motion on the floor?
Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. I would move that the committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision. That council approve the creation of a council policy task force consisting of 3 councillors, the town clerk and the CEO, for the purpose of reviewing all council policies currently in use and identifying the need for future council policies as they may arise.
Councillor Butler, any other comments or questions? Deputy Mayor?
Well, just that I think we talked about, instead of it saying 3 councillors, that it was 3 members of council.
Okay, with that change. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, that's passed. Not to go back a 3rd time, but because we had in camera, we only have 2 items. I don't know if they're long, but do we want to take a lunch break and then come back for those 2, or do we want to plow through and then grab some lunch? Yeah, I think so. Okay, let's do that. Sorry for keep changing when you're going to get lunch, but
Better be good.
yeah, managed. All right, so then let's plow ahead. We have 2 items, the community video camera pilot extension. Aaron, are you doing that, or is Kaden?
Here as well. I'm just gonna pop that up. So the video camera pilot that we have has been ongoing now for 10 months, and council's direction was to do the pilot for a year and then make a decision. So our year would be up in August. We're looking for an extension of that into the end of October so that we can get through another early fall and get a little bit more data. The other reason is that the company that we work with now has a 4K camera that they're going to put up on Harborside, and we want an opportunity to evaluate, the success of that camera, because it will be of a higher quality. So that would all be part of the information we'd be able to bring to you in November, is the goal, if you're willing to do that, to evaluate the whole pilot and see if you want to continue with it. So we're just really looking for an extension until the end of October to do that. And it will be a few more months than we'd originally anticipated, but just to allow you to have a bit more information. And like I said, having that improved camera likely could make a difference. Like we're wanting to know, can you see a license plate, for example, or does it give you that little bit more granularity that we're looking for? So that's the recommendation. I don't know if Kaden wants to add anything. We did give you a little bit of stats just so that you had an update of how it's going so far. But we'll give you a more fulsome review of pros, cons, usage when we come in November.
Okay.
I like this one. I move that committee of the whole forward the following motion to council, that council approves the community video camera pilot extension until October 31st, 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Butler, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Butler, your light's on.
It's funny, I didn't have a question, but now that you said my
Now
light
you-
was on, I do. Other than an update coming to us, how is an update communicated to the public? All those that did not want to have this, how are an update about, did it work? Is it working? What's happening? Is it going to be another Bloom's update type of thing? Or how's that going to be communicated to everyone?
Yeah, it will go to council. I think we still probably have the Blooms. I'm looking at Barb. I'm not sure if that Blooms page that we had initially is still active. Certainly, you know, we could probably reactivate that to put it on. What I can say is that it's been very quiet in terms of feedback from the public since we started the pilot project. So having it on the public council agenda and coming forward with the full evaluation would give the opportunity through public input if anyone wanted to weigh in on the ultimate RFD that Caden will be bringing forward. But it's been, you know, it's been fairly quiet, so take that for what you will, but.
Yep.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, that's passed, and I'm assuming this is next and last one, would that be Alex? We're just motoring through.
Yeah.
Sure.
You want something on this? You might get on it.
Yeah, so this is a RFD for the University Water Transmission Main Project. This year, we're looking to complete the phase that will take it from Park to just the other side of Skyway. We received 3 bids for this project. Unfortunately, all 3 were over the approved budget of $360,000. Adjustments are going to be made to the provisional contract item number 4.1, which is an air release chamber. That item was added to the tender contract items just in case it would be required. I had some discussions with the design consultant. He doesn't believe it's going to be required, so that adjustment carries about a $20,000 value. What we're looking to do here with this RFD is increase the budget, the approved budget by $56,000, just over $56,000, which will allow the project to be it would allow the project to carry forward, continue, and still have the contingency, the $35,000 contingency be available to us for use if needed. Let's see if there's anything else worth discussing in here.
I'll just point out, this is one of those examples that got caught a bit. The procurement policy has changed to now allow me to have 5%, not 10% approval for those things that are under $100,000 variance. And so when Alex did the evaluation, it just got lost in that because he did cut and we were under the 5%. But when we looked at it in more depth, it really should come to council. So that's why we're here, sort of growing pains with the procurement policy, but it's really your motion to make. And it does allow, we don't expect we'll use the contingency in full or maybe at all, but we'll have it available just in case. And that we should be considering the contingency and the total costs when determining the variance. So.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of value in the provisional items, which provisional items are there just in case. They're not necessarily going to be used. And when we made the decision to award, we did that on the basis of just adjusting some of those provisional quantities down and basically just hoping that we wouldn't need to use that $35,000 contingency. And that was done just so we could move on and go forward with the project without having to come back here. But even then, we were 3% over budget, and then little costs basically put it right above that 5% margin. And in order for that level of comfort, we decided to come back here and just ask for a value which would represent the overage and the amount of the contingency, so it's available.
All right, Councillor Butler, would you put this on? It's an audit.
I would move that committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision. That council approve an additional $56,015.11 to the approved $360,000 for contract WOL 001-2022 University Water Transmission Main Park to Skyway.
Seconder. Counselor Elliott, are there any questions of staff? Any comments? Question? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That's passed. We are going to adjourn, then we are coming back to special counsel, and then we're going to do this one again.
Okay.
Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Counselor Palmer, seconder, Counselor Elliott, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. And we are now in special town council meeting, July 4th, 2023. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda for our special town council meeting on July 4th, 2023.
Thank you. And seconder, please.
Second that.
Counselor Butler, thank you. Do we have anybody for public input? No. All right, we have one motion. We probably don't need a staff presentation on that. And Counselor Butler. Did you read the motion?
Deja vu. Oh, no, it's this one now.
It's a new one.
Okay. I would move that council approve an additional $56,015.11 to the approved $360,000 for contract WOL 001-2022 University Water Transmission Main Park to Skyway.
Thank you. And seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Are there any questions of staff or comments from council? Question? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed. And now could I have a motion to adjourn the special town council meeting, please?
I have a very quick question.
Oh, yes.
So now do we go back into the first council meeting? Because we didn't do committee reports from the last council meeting. So we went from a council meeting to a special council meeting without finishing the agenda from the first council meeting.
Oh, because I'm looking at the motions list and there's no motion
Yeah.
list.
Yeah, I was gonna say that after.
I was like, or did I miss it?
So what would you suggest?
I would suggest that the committee reports are there for information unless anyone had something that they wanted to discuss.
Okay.
And if there was
Um,
something, then we should reconvene the committee of the whole. if
Okay,
there was
so let's
something, but-
adjourn.
Okay.
Do we have is there a motion on the floor?
Nope.
That's how-
Yes. Do
Yes.
we- And we had, who's the mover and seconder?
I'll move that we adjourn. the meeting.
Okay, and second it. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are out of council, so we are going to reconvene the committee of the whole meeting
go.
from July. Oh, my goodness, this is
Yeah,
going to be in there, the blot on my record.
There's the agenda.
Yeah, now I gotta go back to the agenda. Okay,
I have the agenda.
I have it in front of me. But I see, I make a mistake of following the motions list.
Yeah.
All right, committee reports external.
As submitted.
And Jody is not, is it Jody or is it you? Ian. Ian?
Yes. As submitted.
WBDC is Counselor McKay, and I'm assuming as submitted, and mine as submitted. Okay,
And then we have the addition of E, which is the Annapolis Valley Regional Library.
right.
Okay.
Presumably as submitted, because unless there are any comments on that one. I would, it would be helpful at least 4 times a year to have our rep there. Here. I think we had that discussion.
I think we did clarify and looking at Laura, because I know she had the conversation with our rep that the expectation would be to be in front of council. I just can't remember the frequency.
Yeah, that's not what I remember, but I thought it was just the votes were going to keep coming in. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll clarify that.
Yeah, they did come in to do a presentation, but I think that, as I said, other towns have a council rep on that, and so the council rep is obviously here to answer questions. My personal feeling is, given that we are getting close to starting the fundraising for the library, that be important, and maybe we can put these reports at the beginning of a council meeting, or that one, just to make it easy for the reps, since they're not a member of council, but in the future. Councillor Elliott?
I just wanted to say that I think Janet Ness is a very able representative for the town. She has the library background professionally. Going forward, things may look different, but as a volunteer position, she has given a great amount of
Yes.
her skill.
I think
So-
I think the comment was, Councillor Elliott, was that we need to have that, just as we need to have the chair of accessibility and audit around the table. We need that person here, skill aside. Is there anything else, Councillor Butler, that I missed? Motion to adjourn the extra meeting of the committee of the whole, and I'm trusting our clerk will make that. We'll massage that into one meeting. Deputy Mayor, was that a motion
That
to?
was a motion.
To adjourn, and a second? All those in favor of adjourning this part of committee of the whole, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?